Hey guys, it's Julian, and today I'm going to be bringing you the very much requested how to make minimal techno like Marco Carola. We're going to be talking, about the play it loud sort of style, that very deep, minimal, and also kind of organic stuff. As usual, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything that you just heard in the intro is available right at the top of the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there, because it's already available. Let's dive in. So here's the project file. We're at 124 BPM, a little bit slower for techno, but it's a bit deeper, kind of fits the more organic feel of the style of track, keeping in mind, I'll paint a picture for you. It's 2011, you're at Boiler Room, EDM hasn't happened yet, and you are going to see a techno set. Typically, at that time, and with this style of techno that was really popular then, they wouldn't really play it faster. Back then, the idea of playing 140 BPM would be really weird, I think. So with the 124, it's a bit deeper, a bit closer to house, but it creates a more deep and organic groove. And the other thing is that the slower you are, the more you can hear each individual percussion. And obviously this track is almost all percussion. Really, it's very percussive focused. So if you go a little bit slower, you can kind of hear each individual percussion a lot more. Versus at 140 BPM, you wouldn't really be able to take in everything that you're hearing the same way. And the first sound that we have up here is the Synth Hihat, which sounds like this. So this is a sound that's used a lot in the style of minimal techno tracks, not just from Marco Carola actually, but a lot of people use these style of hi-hats. And it's a really good sound for this, because it's something that you can kind of it's a percussion, but we can change, you can hear it can morph and evolve over time. And essentially that's what you want, is something that has the ability to do that. And so the way we're doing that here is it's just a short white noise inside of operator, and then it's going into a bandpass filter. You guys have seen me do this a lot before, but what makes this one a little bit different is you can see we have a bit of an envelope on there, so it's a bit more it's got more impact to it, and it's also got an LFO on it. And so that's what I was talking about when I said, you can morph the sound, and you can kind of, if you can change the fabric of the sound, that's essentially what you want. Because now you can get this really cool percussion that's, constantly changing texture. And you've heard this sound in a lot of these tracks, too. This is probably oh, that's how you make that sound when you see this. So, yeah, that's essentially how you do it. It's just, you're sort of moving that filter around. You could even do it a bit more random, we put it on the sample and hold. Then it's kind of random, but the sine wave works really well. And then after that, we just have a bit of erosion. So here's without that. And then with it. So that's another thing that kind of makes this a bit more percussive, kind of gives it a more interesting texture. And then finally, we just have a high pass filter. And that's it for the synth hi-hat. Then we have this 808 tom, which is actually the first of two that we have in here, and it sounds like this. This is another really popular minimal techno sound, and the way that this is made is it's one of these famous 808 tom or conga sort of samples. Any of those boom that you hear a lot in different styles of house and techno that are considered minimal. And what we're doing here is we're just playing it up high. And you just create this kind of nice you can even have it just do just constant like that. But I like the nuance where you kind of have some notes taken out. And this is just the type of sound that you really have to animate. You can see it's not just 16th notes just da-da-da-da over and over. It's 16th notes where we've actually shaved the velocities, so it's going up and then back down. And it's kind of being formed by that. And also we have a bit of swing here, which is done by hand. You can see I've moved these 16th notes. It's the slightest amount of swing, too. You wouldn't even really think that it's there. But if we quantize all these notes, so it kind of misses that, feel. So you have to really make sure that you kind of bring this one to life. You can't just go da-da-da, like I was saying. It has to really be nuanced and have some stuff to it. Because that's the whole thing with minimal music. If you make something that's minimal, that's going to be essentially, by definition, less than what people are expecting for a techno track in this case, then you have to find ways to use those less elements but still get the same amount of excitement out of each element. So that's one way to do it, is by like really getting down to the wire and like shaping like tiny amounts of swing into here, and like the velocity shaping and all that kind of stuff is really going to go a long way when you only have so many things to work with to make it exciting. Now the sound here, like I said, it's just this 808 tom. I have low passed it a little bit. It's pretty important if I turn that off and then on. It's so subtle, but you can see it, like, it just has more of that, like, kind of smooth texture without it. You know, with it, you kind of get like a over top that I don't really like. And especially, like, with this little bit of reverb here. You can see we just have a short reverb, short size, short decay time, not too much dry wet. But if you had that low pass filter off, you get a lot more of that, like, in the reverb. And so yeah, then we have the short reverb, and then this is just being sidechained to the kick, actually. And that's the final layer of movement here. You know, you have to keep in mind, like, when you sidechain something, that's adding rhythm to the sound. It is a mixing thing because, yes, of course, like, you know, it makes it so that the kick is going to sit right on top of the mix. But you're adding, like, layers of rhythm to this. And there's kind of, like, you know, without it, there's only really that one, just the main pattern that you're hearing. But then when you add this, now you're having the 16th note rhythm and this quarter note kind of pulse with the volume. And so these are things that people don't usually talk about, but it's important to keep in mind. You know, it's not just like because we're side chaining it. You have to kind of analyze and like understand, okay, what exactly is it about this side chain that makes it sound so appealing? So that's what that's doing. And I've officially taken 6 minutes and 30 seconds to talk about white noise and an 808 tom. Sweet. So the next sound here is the kick. You can hear this kick. You can see, actually, the kick is completely dry. I did move it forward just to get that start time a little bit smoother. But yeah, so this is just like going to be a nice fat 808 type kick like this. And you're really not going to do too much to it because it's kind of just about letting that like really deep fat kick sit on top of the mix. Now, when you look at the mix, you'll notice that with all these little faders down here, the loudest one is still always going to be the kick. Like, even the bass line isn't as loud as the kick. So that's something to keep in mind. You know, when you have a completely dry kick like this, that's fine, because it's going to sound really good if you can mix it and get it to that level. But you just have to make sure that, like, you know, you're really not needing to do too much turning down here. Like, if you have a dry kick and it's a great sample, it's going to work really well at, like, a pretty high volume, and then just kind of let it shine. Don't do too much to it. Especially when it's just like a fat 808 like this. Then we have the bass line. So you can hear, yeah, it's kind of a simple groove. It's just two notes, but it's all about, like, what you're doing with those two notes. Like, the way that we have this first half note, and then this half note, and this one. I'm kind of thinking about it like that. It's like, first we start with dun 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 dun, and then you get dun 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 dun, and then it goes back to that. So you see what I mean here? It's like, it's two notes, and it's very simple, but it's like each note is kind of carrying the groove forward. It's like this note, or this section I should say, like kind of perfectly primes us for this section to be a bit slower, and then this section's a bit slower, and this one's a bit slower, so it's kind of moving along because your brain is kind of going like, okay, where's it going? Where's it going? And then we start back again with that dun 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 dun. So again, like, very, very micro levels of detail here. But these are the things that are going to come into play because, again, it's a really simple bass line. And just like I was saying with the percussion, we're trying to find the little things that we can do to make this really interesting when it is so minimal, rather than, like, you know, if you just make an actual, like, minimal, simple techno track, it's not really going to work. But it's about making a really simple techno track and then being able to go through and take things that you wouldn't normally, you know, think when you're working with techno, and kind of make them more of the focus of the track. And so for the sound here, this is a pretty simple bass. It's just two sine waves doing FM. The second oscillator is an octave down, so that kind of gives you a little bit of a different feel, you know, because the octave that your FM is happening at, like if I put this up an octave here, kind of determines how it's gonna sound, right? Like if we turn that way up, we get all those like super dubsteppy type of things. So by putting that down an octave, you can hear it just makes the bass like really, really fat, I found. And it gives you that perfect like clubby bass that has that little bit of growl to it. You know what I'm talking about. But then it's also going to be really deep and fat. And the filter's on, but it's not doing anything. After that, we just have a bit of drum bus, which is fattening the sound up and making it really full. And then I have an EQ, which is just cutting out a little bit of room for the punch and the kick. And then finally, we're just sidechaining it to the kick. Because obviously, if you don't do that with this kick, it could get kind of messy. And then on the group of the kick and bass, we just have a little bit of saturation. So here's without it. And then with it. Really, really subtle. But you can hear that little bit of just kind of glue and like synergy it's giving us between the kick and the bass. And you'll also notice I've turned, so it's not that much drive, and then I've turned the bass frequency down here. Because a lot of times when you use saturator, you can get that kind of like on the sound. You guys know what I'm talking about if you've ever used a saturator before and had that happen. But if you turn the bass frequency down, you can actually kind of solve that problem. Like, it just makes it a little bit cleaner. So it's a great way to still get that fat saturation without the mess. And yeah, then we have the snare. Pretty standard sort of snare for this style. You know, it's more like a live snare. Got like a really short reverb on that and some drum bus. It's just going to sit really well. Just doom. Then we have our hi-hat, which you can see each of these layers is dry, but it's two sounds layered together. So we have this one, which is more on the high end, and then this one, which is more for the mid-range. And then, yeah, you can see when you put them together, you get the best of both worlds. And that's really what you want. You want to find two sounds to layer together, not because you want to get more of what one is doing, but because one is doing one thing and one is doing another thing. They're very clearly two different things. Like, you would immediately be able to tell they're two different samples if you played them on their own. You know, because again, this one is in the high end, this one's in the mid-range. So then when you put them together, you don't really have to do anything to layer them, because they're just filling in. One's filling in where one is missing, and the other's filling in where the other's missing. So it's kind of like, that's the idea with layering. And also, that's how you make your hi-hat sound really full. Like, for these main hi-hats like this, you know, if you just do like one little tss, it's not really going to work. But if you have these two layers where you get the tsh and the tss together, that's how you make this hi-hat stand out from the other ones. And yeah, after that we have these hand drums. So this is where we start getting to more kind of like background percussion. You know, everything that I've shown you so far is really like the main stuff that you hear right up front. Like, if you listen to this track one time without like really listening deeply, this would probably be the stuff that you would be able to recall. However, you can see when I solo just this stuff, and then we go back to with all this other stuff here, you can see that there's actually a lot more going on there that you're going to want. Like, if you just have those main elements, it's going to sound good because those main elements are well made. But you can hear there's a lot more out there that we need to add. So that's kind of where this hand drum comes in. It's doing that. You know, just that little like constant thing. It's all about creating these really constant things. It's also happening with this 808 tom here. Yeah, these on their own may not be that much energy. But then you combine that with the kick, and the hi-hat, and the snare. And you can hear what these like really repetitive things are going to do for your track. They just kind of like keep it moving from the background. You know, it's like you have to kind of have like different groups of things. Like, you have your main stuff, and then you're going to have the stuff that's going to be underneath that a little bit over here. but it's kind of like, because it's underneath that, it's holding that main stuff up. So that's what you want to keep in mind, is it's not like this is here and this is over here. It's like this is here right on top, and then this stuff is underneath it, but without this stuff, this is gonna fall. So that's how you want to keep that in mind, you know. And we have these vinyl drum break hi-hats, which are just going. If I play that with the kick and the other hi-hat, you can really hear it. Like, it just kind of makes that a little bit more animated. By adding the one that's just like a live drummer. Then we have a shaker loop, which is being sidechained to the kick. So this just adds some more organic percussion. We have all these like rim shot style percussions. Now these are really going to be playing off of each other. The way you want to program these is pick 3 or 4 sounds like I've done here, and then you're just going to start putting in 16th notes and 8th notes on one of them, really. And like once you do that, maybe you come up with like over and over on that one. So then you have your going. Then you're going to go and add, and it's like, essentially these are all built by making one groove, and then you find little grooves that are going to bounce off of that one, and then by the end you have these 4 layers grooving together and just kind of adding some nice background percussion. You know, they're just there to fill in that kind of like constant like 16th note space. And then we have this little bongo, which is very simple. Dun, 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 dun. But this is really common in minimal techno. Like having like some sort of a thing like this that's just dun 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 dun. It could be dun 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 dun. It could be dun dun dun. Like it could be so many different things, but just like really simple, half note in length, meaning like that's all the pattern. Like yeah, you can see what I mean there. But then just having that like adds a nice contrast, because everything else is all over the place 16th notes. So just to have this one really steady thing fits really well into there. And then the last layer down here is this little bell, which just gives us a and you can hear what that adds. That's something that's really easy to overlook too. Just having that little right in the middle of the groove, like how it goes right there, instead of being like right there, for example, is just going to add some flow to your beat, and it's going to make it just feel that much more full and exciting to listen to. And yeah. So that is going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Let me know if you want to see more minimal techno. Like I said in the beginning, you can get this full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, everything from this video that you just saw. The entire template is available right in the top of the description on my Bandcamp for just $5. It's not that expensive, but it really helps to keep supporting me and keep me going so I can keep bringing you guys new videos every day and teaching you guys new techniques that aren't out there on the internet. Plus, you get this great template to work with. You know, this will be great to just build your own track off of, or use as a template to build multiple tracks from. You can really do a lot with this, and it's pretty affordable. So link to that is at the top of the description. Thank you so much for all the support, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.